In tonight's news edition, a royal decree rejects the amendment to the Civil Service Retirement Draft Law, which was recently passed by Parliament. World powers meeting in Paris give backing to military action against Islamic State militants in Iraq, and the foreign minister urges support of Iraq to counter terrorist organizations. And Egyptian security forces killed 7 militants believed to be with the Sinai-based militant group. Good evening and very warm welcome to the news. A royal decree has rejected the amendment to the 2014 Civil Service Retirement Draft Law, which was passed recently by Parliament. Under the bill, lawmakers who have 7 years of civil service are entitled to lifetime pensions. His Majesty the King sent a letter to Prime Minister Abdullah Mansour in which he asked the government to seek the Constitutional Court's opinion on the controversial draft legislation. The letter asked the government to revisit the draft and conduct a thorough and objective study of its various aspects to reach realistic and just solutions in line with the provisions of the law and in a way to achieve justice for all citizens, taking into account the tough economic conditions in the country. The letter said the decision to turn down the draft was an embodiment of the country's efforts to consolidate the values of equality among all social segments and its keenness to draft a transparent and objective civil service retirement law that addresses the defects that place pressures on the state revenues. World powers meeting in Paris have given public backing to military action to fight Islamic State militants in Iraq. France sent jets to Iraq, a step towards becoming the first ally to join the US-led campaign there. But the countries that attended made no mention of Syria, and the United States has also ruled out any future military coordination with Iran in the US-led coalition against the militants. This report has more.
Representatives from more than 30 countries pledged support for Iraq to fight the militant group Islamic State IS. Addressing the officials at the Paris meeting, French President François Hollande called for united action against the extremist IS fighters.
This terrorist movement has spread in the whole territory, in Iraq, in Syria. This terrorist movement ignores borders and has the ambition to build a state. That is the threat. It is global, so there must be a global answer.
Iraqi President Fuad Massoum has asked for air operations to be continued regularly against militant sites.
We are asking for airborne operations to be continued regularly against terrorist sites. We must not allow them to set up sanctuaries. We must pursue them wherever they are. We must cut off their financing. We must besiege them with laws that forbid people to work with them. We must bring them to justice, and we must stop the fighters in the neighboring countries joining them. We must all contribute to the humanitarian efforts to help the refugees, the displaced people who are undergoing tragedy.
The world powers backed military measures to help defeat the IS, boosting Washington's efforts to set up a coalition. In a practical move, France sent fighter jets on a reconnaissance mission over Iraq, a step closer to becoming the first ally to join the United States in a new bombing there.
We told the Iraqis we were available and asked them for authorization. The decision, if there's one, it will be taken by the French president to fly over their territory, and they asked us to do so.
But a statement after today's conference made no mention at all of Syria, the other country where Islamic State fighters hold a wide swathe of territory. While Iraq attended the Paris meeting, Syria did not, nor did its main regional ally Iran. Speaking after the meeting, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said Moscow backed military measures in Iraq, but added Syria was also on the agenda. He added there could not be what he called double standards in the war against terrorism. The Paris conference was an important vote of confidence for the new Iraqi government, formed last week, led by Shiite Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi, and also including minority Sunnis and Kurds in important jobs. Hala Dababne for the news at 10.
In his address to the Paris meeting, Foreign Minister Nasser Al-Judy called for close international cooperation and coordination to garner the necessary support for Iraq to fight terrorist organizations and the spread of extremist ideology. He said the first block in any anti-terrorism effort lies in changing the circumstances that led to the deterioration in Iraq. Judy also told the meeting that the formation of Iraq's new government, headed by Prime Minister Haider al-Abadi, is a key step towards the restoration of Iraq's unity, which would largely help to fight the militant Islamic State that controlled swathes in Iraq and Syria. The minister also emphasized the need to start the necessary reforms to bolster an all-inclusive Iraqi state through a comprehensive political process. Judy warned against the cross-border danger of terrorism that threatens regional stability and security that warranted collective efforts to address the situation. Iraqi President Rasmussen said he hoped the Paris meeting would bring a quick response to the Islamic State militants. Residents in Baghdad welcomed military measures against IS, but others questioned the costs involved in any possible airstrikes. This report has more.
In Baghdad, many say they welcome the conference, which is currently underway in Paris, addressing the threat from Islamic State militants.
We, the Iraqi people, see this conference as a step in the right direction and a clear and definite shout-out against the terrorists with their different colours and backgrounds and ways.
I hope that this international gathering will be supportive of strikes against IS and get rid of them. I hope that there's real cooperation between the government and the security forces with this alliance and its results positive, God willing. And I really hope that they form this alliance as soon as possible.
Others question the costs involved in possible airstrikes.
Are the airstrikes going to be paid for by Iraq? What about the mobilization? Are we going to have troops from abroad coming or foreign instructors for training the army? All these questions have not been answered yet by the government. The government should clarify that. But despite all that, I think the conference is a positive thing.
The one-day meeting of as many as 30 different countries is dominating the news. The U.S. is unveiling a plan to fight Islamic State militants in both Syria and Iraq, and it hopes to convince attending nations to sign on.
NATO Secretary General Fogh Rasmussen said military intervention against Islamic State IS militants could be justified on the grounds of self-defense or preventing a campaign pretty close to genocide. Rasmussen added that the threat posed by IS requires a military response to degrade and defeat the terrorist organization. But he said NATO, as an organization, would not be undertaking military strikes against the group. Rasmussen said he felt there is a basis in fundamental principles of the United Nations Charter to take military action against the IS. He stressed that the world should learn from previous military operations, such as Libya, that it was important to work after a military operation to help such countries improve their security and good governance. Egyptian security forces killed 7 militants believed to be with a Sinai-based militant group. Interior Minister Mohammed Ibrahim told a press conference a police intelligence indicated that militants of the group called Ansar Bayt al-Maqdis were taking shelter in Al-Galala mountain in Suez, a base from which they plotted and launched attacks against security forces. He said that after a heavy shootout with the armed extremists, security forces killed all 7 members and later identified them via DNA tests. Ibrahim said the militant group is mainly active in northern Sinai, Greater Cairo and the Nile Delta, pledging to capture the rest of the group. The minister also said there was no presence of the Islamic State in Egypt, adding that those recently arrested in the country are only ideologically linked to the militant group. The top leader of Egypt's outlawed Muslim Brotherhood, Mohammed Badia, was sentenced to life in jail, along with 14 others. They face charges of murder and inciting violence during clashes near Cairo last year. The session had been summoned for witness statements, but the judge surprised journalists and others present by issuing a verdict. Badia is among hundreds of Brotherhood members already sentenced to death in mass trials that have drawn criticism from Western governments and human rights groups. The death sentences are subject to appeal. In what is known as the Bahr al-Azam case, Badia and the other defendants were convicted of the murder of 5 people and the attempted murder of 100 others during violence that broke out in Giza on July the 15th in 2013. The UN Nuclear Agency chief said the investigation into suspected atomic bomb research by Iran will not be an endless process. The comment by International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Yukiya Amano was to pressure Tehran to step up cooperation with the long-stalled probe. Amano spoke 3 weeks after Iran failed to meet a deadline for providing requested information to the IAEA. In line with the findings of a confidential IAEA report earlier this month, Amano said Iran had not carried out 2 of the 5 transparency steps it had agreed to implement by August the 25th.
Iran has implemented 3 of the 5 practical measures agreed with the agency in the 3rd step of the framework for cooperation. It has begun discussions with the agency on the 2 remaining practical measures. The agency asked Iran to propose new practical measures by September 2nd, which it will implement in that next step. Iran has yet to propose such measures.
Back here at home, Her Majesty Queen Rania Abdullah made a visit to Adlil town in the Zarqa Governorate, where she dropped in on one of the public schools in the area. At Ruba Adlil Primary School, Queen Rania witnessed up close a special education class for hearing and speech impaired students. She passed by other classrooms and spoke with the school principal and teachers about the challenges they face as a result of the overcrowded classrooms. The school is the only primary school in the area and has welcomed a large number of Syrian students. The Queen then visited Adlil Women's Society for Special Education to check on its work and the services it provides for the residents in the area. Her Majesty also checked on 2 classes for students with disabilities where the teachers were trained and certified by Handicap International. Her Majesty praised attendees for their efforts and determination to improve their income and livelihoods. To the world of style, British retailer Topshop launched a new digital first by letting shoppers buy 6 ready-made items from its latest collection immediately after its show at London Fashion Week. The collection, which features brightly coloured striped dresses, cycling jerseys and lame dresses in cotton, satin and leather, was live streamed globally and unveiled exclusively on social networks such as Instagram and Facebook. The high street fashion giant enlisted the likes of Cara Delevingne, Jordan Dunn and Hailey Baldwin. This season also saw youth label House of Holland team up with 3D imaging tech firm Metail to allow shoppers to try on and buy clothes from the Spring-Summer 2015 collection in real time through a digital avatar. Arsenal trained in England before heading off to Germany, where they face Borussia Dortmund tomorrow in their opening game of this season's Champions League. Arsenal faced Dortmund in the group stage of the competition last season, winning 1-0 in Germany after suffering a 2-1 home loss. The Gunners will be without French fullback Matteo Debuchy, who is out of the match with an ankle injury, which may see him sidelined for up to 2 months. And also in the Champions League, Real Madrid are facing Basel in the Group B opener at the Bernabeu tomorrow. Coach Carlo Ancelotti believes tomorrow's match will be a good chance for the holders to put a poor start to their domestic campaign behind them. Real were beaten 2-1 by champions Atletico Madrid at the Bernabeu on Saturday, their 2nd successive La Liga reverse, and some of the club's notoriously fans made their anger clear by roundly whistling captain and goalkeeper Iker Casillas. Now a look at the weather forecast. Fair tonight in most regions and cool across the hilly areas with plenty of low clouds, while winds will be northwesterly fresh. Fair weather is forecast for much of the hilly areas and mild across the desert areas, but hot weather will prevail across the Jordan Valley. Winds will be northwesterly fresh. And further south, the port of Aqaba should expect a hot day with northerly moderate winds and slightly rough seas. Next are the lows and highs for tonight and tomorrow. Now our top stories once again. A royal decree rejects the amendment to the Civil Service Retirement Draft Law, which was recently passed by Parliament. World powers meeting in Paris give backing to military action against Islamic State militants in Iraq, and the foreign minister urges support of Iraq to counter terrorist organizations. And Egyptian security forces killed 7 militants believed to be with a Sinai-based militant group. And that's the end of tonight's news. My name is Raad Btoush. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you tomorrow.